At 7.
No rush, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to open the Tuesday, February 10th meeting of the Middleton Plan Commission. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Adams,
Here.
Haniro. Here. Shaw,
Here.
Summers. Here. And Chair Sonntag is present. Bruce and Paulson are absent and excused.
Very good. Thank you, Abby. Next item is Plan Commission meetings of the 27th of January. Any additions, changes? Nobody? Okay, I declare the meetings minutes approved. First item on the agenda, action item is sign design review for Allen Bay Apartments. Staff recommendation is approval of the monument sign. Is there a motion?
This is Shaw. Go ahead and move for approval of as proposed, signs as proposed.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Discussion? Pretty straightforward.
Yep, I
All
like the
right.
saying.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2 is the minor SIP modification plan for sign design review for DG Aesthetics. Recommendation from staff is approval of the wall sign as a minor SIP modification.
This is Haniro. I will make that motion.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Discussion? Another one that's fairly straightforward. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 on the agenda is the concept review for a land use classification for data centers. Thank you.
Yeah, so for this agenda item, this was prompted actually by a conversation with Alder Haniro inquiring about different properties, and we were discussing whether there might be any properties in the city that may be considered for a data center land use. And so Daphne, in her role as zoning administrator, and I wanted to do a little bit of research into our code requirements and where these might be allowed within the city of Middleton. And so I had the opportunity to attend the Wisconsin Economic Development Association conference, which was held in Middleton, and they had a 2.5-hour panel, a deep dive into data centers, where I learned a lot about why there is sudden interest in data centers in this area. It's not just due to AI, but also because of our location near a major transmission line and how reliable the energy supply is in this area. So if you've seen a lot of articles recently in the news about different communities and how they're considering these from a land use standpoint, this is kind of the background on why. So it's unsurprising that our zoning code is not really clear cut. It doesn't specifically list data centers as a land use, and that is due to a couple of factors. One is the variety of types and the different sizes of these land uses, but also because when we were going through our code discussions, there weren't really a lot of comparable proposals at that time. So one thing I want to be clear on is there is no data center proposal in the city of Middleton. But we just wanted to make sure that we were prepared for looking at how this community would want to regulate that type of use and understand the land use impacts. The city of Madison recently adopted a 12-month temporary moratorium, and that was applied to data centers that are larger than 10,000 square feet. And they identified the recently formed Dane County Advisory Committee on Data Centers and their work that is just now starting up as one factor in their decision to adopt a moratorium. They wanted to take some time to learn from this new advisory committee that was formed. The advisory committee had their first meeting today at 12:30. I don't know if anybody heard an outcome from that meeting. I didn't have a chance to join, but it was taped, so I plan to look at the recording when I get a chance. we oftentimes, when we're looking at a new land use, we will look at best practices from the American Planning Association, our professional association, and then also the Urban Land Institute. And both of these have guidance, which are included in your packet. Kind of the biggest concern from a staff standpoint and what we've heard from public opinions in other communities as registered is the larger scale data centers, what are referred to in the memo as hyperscale. So there are 5 different types of data centers that were defined by that zoning practice document that was actually written by a county planner from Lynn County, Iowa, graduate from the same program that I graduated from at the University of Iowa. Really going in depth and looking at the different categories of data centers and how communities are regulating them. So for our zoning ordinance, we do not have a clear category for data centers. In Madison, they are identifying these as a telecommunications land use, but for our code, that doesn't fit because we refer to communications towers, not telecommunication facilities. So the telecommunications land use in our zoning code would not allow a data center. Some of the smaller data center type uses, especially those that are ancillary to a primary use, those might fit within our light industrial land use currently.
That would be an edge
Yeah, that could be an edge
or a mod.
or, yeah, I could go back and refer to that. Or even an enterprise.
Mm.
So that would
Yeah.
be like attached to a principal use like a bank or a hospital. We have combed through our code in detail, and we don't believe that any larger data center facilities would be allowed under any of our standard zoning classifications currently. That does not address the planned unit developments that we have. This commission knows that we have more than 70 PUDs, and we have mostly focused our research on the larger ones because for a hyperscale data center, it's going to need a larger tract of land. And in one of those 3, we do think that data centers are permitted, and that is the Airport Road Business Park that's outlined in pink. Most of the sites in the business park are around 5 acres, but there is a larger site along the Beltline that, if I'm recalling, I think it's about 17 or 18 acres that's available there. So the ULI paper had different recommendations for how communities could regulate these. What we are proposing and we believe would give the city the most oversight for this type of use would be to implement a specific data center zoning district. That could be done either through a land use classification code that could be permitted or conditional within another zoning district, or we could create a brand new zoning district that would only be for a hyperscale data center. That would kind of be similar to our extraction district, which there's only really one land use that would be permitted within that district. That would be my preference because if we were to go with what is outlined as, well, it's option 4 sub 1. If we had an application for an IH zoning, which currently is not mapped anywhere in our city, and the city were to approve that, a data center would be a permitted or conditional use within that district, and whatever is originally proposed, that would give, what's the word I'm looking for?
By right, so.
Yeah, by right, there would be rights attached to that would permit everything that's in IH, industrial high, plus a data center. But if option 4 sub 2 were selected, it would be very clear at the time of a rezoning application what is being proposed, and it would give the city of Middleton full discretion to consider that application. So I would recommend option 4 sub 2. So that's our primary staff recommendation. The secondary part of this is the Plan Commission may also want to consider a moratorium, as has been done in Madison. That would give our staff more time to consider the PUDs in the city, because we have received guidance from our attorney that if we were to adopt a moratorium, it would also apply to the PUDs. So that would give us a little bit more time just to understand the land use implications coming out of the Dane County group and understand what Madison and other communities decide to do with this land use. So that's all we had prepared. Did I miss anything that you would? Okay. So Daphne and I can answer any questions that you have.
How does the electric grid get affected by this? And, you know, if we're one community in a big county, that this is going to affect every community just about, I would guess. So how do we try to manage that if we do a data center?
I think from what I understood from the panel discussion, and there were utility representatives as well as data center developers, Meta had a representative as well as QTS on that panel. Kind of the first stop for these is not the local municipality, but it is the electric company, because they need to determine whether or not there's adequate supply at that location. They use a lot of power. There is a concerted effort to try to offset that with renewable energy. But Public Service Commission regulations can get in the way of them being able to fully offset with renewable, because there are requirements that the energy attached to that use has to be generated on site, which means that that's even more land that's required for a hyperscale data center. So yeah, I mean, as far as like details on how the electric grid would be impacted, I don't have those details. And I guess that's kind of part of the reason why we're wanting to have a chance to kind of dig into this a little bit more.
Yeah, it is interesting. I just look at what Epic did with the 6 towers out north of us.
Mm-hmm.
I assume they did that because they have a lot of computing power there and they're only getting more. So that, to me, they're kind of a data center. I mean, they are.
And they also generate renewable energy on site through geothermal, and they have
Sure.
solar.
You know, I think what you said is right now we can't get a data center here.
Not
That's not
in
approved,
the
right?
standard zoning districts.
I don't know if we really need to move ahead on anything at this point. I mean, I guess you can create a district, but why? I mean, we don't have a lot of land here to expand to, do we?
Potentially in the future. I mean, our growth area has a lot of land, but we're hoping to put housing on that. But
Right.
that's not, it's not guaranteed. I would lean towards adopting the recommendation to go with option 4.2. Creating the new data center district. The PUDs, can we go back to the map? That's a little more concerning because that's our business park. So there's space in there, correct?
Yep. I was just gonna try to pull up the largest remaining piece.
I guess I would wonder, how long do you think it would take for the staff to determine in our 70 PUDs if there's a risk?
Well, I think that there could be, I mean, if a data center were proposed in the Airport Road Business Park tomorrow, I don't think the city would have an ability to deny that if it met all of the conditions of the general development plan, as far as like setbacks and lot coverage, and they could manage their stormwater. It's already permitted. It's already would be a permitted land use. It wouldn't require any kind of rezoning.
Are you talking about PUD?
Yeah.
Well, we control the PUD.
The Airport Road Business Park has they got their PUD already approved. And it does list, it lists, I forget now specifically, let me check and look. I think it's telecommunications centers. Yeah, telecommunication facilities. Those are considered permitted uses.
That's not a data center.
Based on Madison's interpretation and our research, we believe that a telecommunication facility would encompass a data center use.
That your attorney said that?
We did work with Mick Fleming on this, yes. So
I think it's a stretch.
How, what, do we know, I'm sorry, I didn't realize the task force was, I'm not a member, but I didn't realize the task force was meeting for the first time today. Do we know what their time frame is?
I do not.
I mean, I guess it's gonna take a year at least. Things like that usually do. I see there being benefit and I don't really see the harm of following Madison's lead and having a limited moratorium on new data centers, or data centers being located in our PUDs. Because like you said, we don't have to worry about the standard districts.
Mhm.
We can create the, like cross that T and dot that I by creating the district as you suggested. But then for the rest of it, I think it would be prudent to not make ourselves vulnerable as more and more municipalities are doing the same thing that we're considering.
Mhm.
Did Matt offer any suggestions as to what language could be in a moratorium?
I think his primary concern is how the moratorium ends up defining a data center, because he didn't want to he didn't want to run the risk of creating a non-conforming use if there is a data center that already operates somewhere in Middleton that we're not aware of. That was one thing that he would be very concerned about. We looked at datacentermap.com, I think is the website that both the city of Madison referenced, and also in the panel discussion that I attended, they kind of held that up as like the standard national database. But we also know that Madison has a data center that is 1,200 square feet. So is it possible that there's something within our community now that would meet that definition? It is possible. There's nothing showing on the map. So he was very concerned about that. And then his other concern is tailoring the moratorium to tie it to like a size definition or something more in line with the hyperscale, given that we don't permit them in our standard zoning classifications currently. So I think his two main concerns were not creating any non-conforming uses and making sure that we're specific about what the moratorium should cover. Tonight's action would be just to give staff direction on which way we want to go with this, and then we will work with Matt to bring back the ordinance changes. And we would also need to hold a public hearing at that point.
And then I did look up the advisory committee and it says, they'll provide findings and recommendations to Dane County communities, within 12 months of its first meeting. So 12 months from today.
So we don't really need to vote on anything.
We're just looking for where you would like us to, put together the ordinance changes and which kind of direction you want to go in. So I'm hearing some support for option 4, sub item 2, creating a new data center district. And I'm hearing support for a moratorium that would be 12 months. Would there be interest in kind of following Madison's guidance with the square footage limit? So anything above 10,000 square feet for the moratorium?
I think so.
Yeah.
Is everyone in agreement on sub-item 2?
Yeah, I mean,
No one feels.
we don't know yet.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of research to do, and I think we need to just put a cover on this for a little while so we can figure things out. And I think that giving us a year is prudent, and I'm sure there's plenty of communities that wish they had known about something in
Mhm.
advance. I don't think that all data centers are bad, but I want to know more about it.
Well, and I think that what you've seen in communities in my hometown, Port Washington, is exhibit A on this. This has been eroding, data centers have been eroding public trust in in their government. And you kind of saw it a little bit emerging with the forest until the city, there's a village board stepped in and said, we're not doing this. But I think, and part of the reason why it's eroding public trust is because they're coming at you so fast. Like from the time it was proposed, the time that the city of Port Washington approved everything was just a couple months. I mean, it was incredible how quickly they moved. And they did so kind of, at least a lot of the residents of the city think they did so in secret. I think slowing things down a little bit, doing our homework.
Yep.
Might build that public trust. So if we do get a proposal, we'll actually be able to vet it properly. Also gives us an opportunity to see how things are playing out around our region and around our state with these.
I agree. It also gives us room to, to pivot because this technology changes, week to week, month to month, so.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay,
you're good? All
I
right,
think we're good. We will bring something back as soon as we're able.
thank you. Item 4 is the discussion and recommendation on a complete streets annual report.
Yes, so this is our Complete Streets Annual Report. I believe when we adopted our Complete Streets policy in, I think late 2023. So 2024 was the first time we had an annual report, and so this is our second round. So I've kind of restructured the report just so we can kind of keep track over the years, how we're hitting all of these metrics. And so all of these metrics were in our Complete Streets policy. And so they're just here to let you guys see how we've been doing over the past year. Some items to note is that originally the Parmenter Street shared use path was included in here as a new shared use path, but that was removed because it doesn't actually connect all the way as a shared use path because we had some issues acquiring the needed right of way. And so it also makes it just harder for our park staff to actually maintain that since they have to stop and then cross the sidewalk and then go back. So they haven't been able to plow it in the winter. So the Ped Bike Transit Committee decided that it shouldn't be really counted as a complete street. So that was taken out. There were some other items like number 8 was about the amount of impervious surface. And that was just really hard to calculate for staff. So Ped Bike Transit actually recommended removing that from our further or our future reports, just because even when we did have a major increase or decrease in impervious surface, like when we opened the Lake Street boat launch, we actually, I think, increased the impervious surface because we had to add sidewalks and make it ADA accessible. So it was just we had no idea how much we were actually adding and subtracting. And so this will be removed in the future. We also took this to our joint public works Ped Bike Transit meeting yesterday. And so there were a couple notes to include engaging our stormwater utility board and water resources since whenever we put in new paths, it can affect that. And then another thing to add is future impacts on budget or looking forward into our 2026 budget. After looking at all of the things that we've done in 2025, what should we be looking forward to in 2026? So I'll be taking a look at that and adding that to this report as well. So this is just, to let you guys know what's been going on the past year for Complete Streets. And then our recommendation would just be to recommend it to council.
Do you have goals? Or is it just, are we just reporting?
Yeah, so
What's
that,
happening?
I think that was kind of the point of talking about that future 2026 budget, was to kind of focus in on some goals. Yeah, that was also something that came up at Ped Bike Transit. So the way the report is, it's just,
Here's
what have we
happened.
done with the metrics?
Mhm.
And so the way Ped Bike Transit wants to go about it next year is to have this along with the work plan at their first January meeting, so that they can, come up with those goals for the next year.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah. Mhm.
Is there any other discussion? Yeah,
Thank you for preparing this. And is this the second or third time?
I think this is the second annual report that we've done.
Okay.
So the first one was 2024.
And do you envision in future years adding 26, so you'll have 3 years of data for comparison, or? is it-
Yeah, we'll
okay.
have to work with the
Yep,
formatting a
sure.
little bit in the future, but yeah, the plan is to, I think, at least have like 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years of data to keep track.
Okay, and just looking at some of the items in here, so it said there were 2 crashes involving fatalities. And can you explain what those were? Was that involving bicycles or pedestrians, or?
Yeah, so the 2 crashes with fatalities, I believe one is listed here with a fatality. So this chart on the screen right now that lists the 9, these are our 9 crashes involving a pedestrian or a bicyclist. So one of the fatalities did include a pedestrian. And then the other fatality, I believe, was like a motorcyclist accident. Yeah.
And when it says pedestrian and distracted, is the distracted a
I-
reference
but-
to the pedestrian
No,
or
to
the
the driver.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And then on page 68,
Mhm.
same page, it says state law does not require the filing of reports for crashes that involve only a pedestrian and or bicyclist. So even though state law doesn't require that, is that something the city can ask for or start
So
collecting?
all of this crash data comes from police reports. So it's only if a police report is filed is, if we would get something like that. I'm actually not sure if all this data comes from like community crash maps. So they're like, I think they started from UW, but now they've
Mhm.
kind of branched off of their own. And so I'm not actually sure if they would include if it was like a bike and a pedestrian collision or anything like that. So yeah, I think it would have to first be filed as a police report, and most of those aren't filed.
Sure.
So that is the limitation for it.
Okay, and then on page 70, I do agree with the idea of removing performance measure 8 and replacing it with a more meaningful measure. I wonder if we need to add a measure regarding violations or failing to adhere to our complete streets policy. I mean, I'm thinking back to last summer and just how awful it was for pedestrians. And everything else that we're counting is, how many did this, how many did that, how many trees were pruned or planted. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to capture instances of, or days when pedestrians lost access, or, just something to acknowledge that there's some negative things that happen that right now, because they weren't envisioned, they weren't put in the policy as performance measures. Nobody really thought about it until last year when Century and Allen intersection was closed seemingly forever, and there were no detours. Yeah, there were no detours set up in like reasonable ones. And same thing with High Road, that's in my district. And so people were like one day they'd drive to work and then they'd come back and there had been no warning, now it's closed. They have to go all the way around to Greenbrier. And it just was not, not good for our residents. So I'm not sure how you capture that, but I do think that could be something that's included.
Yeah, I would just echo that because this is going back a little bit further, but when Franklin was closed, I rescued many elementary children on their first day of school because there was no redirection and you did not want them going around on University Avenue to get to Sauk Trail. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I was just, I think I wrote on the Facebook page when they started putting the high road
Yeah.
notice out there, like make sure the children have a path because
And that could even just be qualitative, just a short summary of instances that where we fell short or where developers did the same. And maybe that could come from reports to our city's report a problem, I know sometimes people will report things like there's a pickup truck parked on the multipurpose path and it would never park right in the middle of a drive lane, but it parked on the multipurpose path.
The Public Works, do they interface with like transit in terms of signage or when projects are gonna be?
They
They do now.
do now.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And I think that was starting to happen. It's just that there was a whole bunch of things that came together in the summer of 25 that just wreaked havoc. And then
Not good.
finally, I would also say, where it says implementation, and then item number 3 under takeaways, implementation of the complete streets policy complete streets during construction policy. What about updating, and if we can include it in this report, I asked in July to have the the city developer agreement updated to not only reference our complete streets policy, but also explain what that means in a way that is meaningful, because just putting in a link isn't gonna help. And I think I used language like, make it clear that if, an existing roadway remains accessible for vehicles, an existing sidewalk needs to remain accessible.
yeah.
Could be with a detour, but whatever goes for the road, it should go for paths and sidewalks too. So I think I would add that as a measure,
Yeah.
maybe just for 2026, to make sure that the city developer agreement template and any others are updated to spell out when you're doing stuff, this is what you need to do. And it should apply to the city as well, not just, not just our developers. It's stuff the city does too. And
I
that's
think you might be able to put that as a 2020. Well, no, it would be 2026 because it was, I believe that is done. It was the date that it was revised on the website. It's not correct because it says 4/5/24, but it was just added, I think, just in the last month, Luke.
But just the reference to the complete streets policy or actual language?
He has references to the policy, but then he also has some language that says, adhere in full to the city's complete streets policy. All public roadways, paths, and sidewalks must remain passable by their respective users at all times.
That's great. Good, I like that. Thank you.
Anything else? If not, I will adjourn the meeting.
Great.
All right, 7:33.